All right, let's take a look at the events at Charlottetown in United States. What we find there in these weeks' unrest, disturbances on the streets, the declaration of emergency, the bringing of the National Guards in the United States, is an interesting phenomenon because it's happening not only to the United States, but it's happening to many countries in the free world. So let's take a look at it. What we find in Charlotte in these recent disturbances is very peculiar in that, firstly, these protests we know from the recent exposures of the emails of Hillary Clinton that she has instigated protests, left-wing protests in Israel on the eve of elections in Israel against Netanyahu. And this was done. We have the emails there. I saw one, and which is interesting, where she is discussing how to go about arranging street protests to give an impression that Netanyahu's policies, as well as the legitimacy of the Israeli state, is projected in a negative light, so that left-leaning groups get some advantage, psychological advantage, to give an impression to the general public in Israel that Netanyahu has lost his approval and he is being seen as a public enemy, something like what they're doing to Trump here. So there is not only a media chorus there, but we learn that Hillary Clinton has actively asked the Central Intelligence Agencies, and in the email she is discussing this with the ambassador there, how to go about these protests against Netanyahu using left-wing groups. So what we find in Charlotte also has a precedence. We know already that people like George Soros has been giving millions of dollars to groups like Black Lives Matter. So it is not at all a grassroots movement, but we have powerful agencies like state actors like the CIA, people like Hillary Clinton, George Soros, who have been actually pulling the strings of this puppet show on the streets. Firstly, you have to keep that in mind. It's not a spontaneous show or spontaneous eruption of public disaffection with the policing. Secondly, we have to understand that radical liberals ally with radical movements. So the radical liberals, they ally with radical black movement, black dissent movements. And in turn, these radical liberal, radical leftist groups, they ally with radical Islam. So they find an affinity between their objectives as well as a kind of a bonding when it comes to the common enemy, which they perceive as the conservative societies and their systems and institutions. Basically, what this street protest in Charlotte is conveying to the blacks in general as to the observing general population, but this is a message actually. What they're saying is in fact a promise for protection. It's basically a political protection racket. These protests in Charlotte and now in NC repeat pattern of George Soros funded protest in Israel against Netanyahu during elections there, and the CIA orchestrated left-wing protests against Netanyahu. The real issue of violence and the bogus issue of Black Lives Matter, that is street justice dispensation, eye for an eye shooting down on the streets of a civilian in revenge for the alleged state crime of extrajudicial killing of a black man. So we see also Marxist methodology of revolutionary social justice, of looting and violating private property. And then we see left-leaning professional activists receiving funds from people like Soros and professional agitators congregating from outside. It's also futile, like the Occupy Wall Street crowd. You shut down the Wall Street, shut down the stock markets, you will end up with more companies going belly up, and there will be more people without jobs. So it is not a solution. It is actually it will aggravate what you're protesting. So the trigger event here is ironically a black cop shooting down a black suspect in a car chase. This is being portrayed as a vindictive white system's racist hate crime. But then they too know the absurdity of it. They quickly notice that it's a black man who shot, so it's now blue in color, according to one of the Fox Devil's Advocate Democrat spokesman. So it is the cops. The problem is with the bad cops. So still, the racist rhetoric is laced with it. We do have, now and then, they show you the clip of the family of the victim, the family of the alleged convict who was shot dead, screaming, "All you white people are devils," which is a racist thing to say. Firstly, we note here that basically what they are telling by this orchestrator, whoever is orchestrating it, like they did in Israel, or they did it in Europe for flooding Europe with Muslim migrants, like Soros arranged protests and welcome signs. We can see that whoever is doing it is giving a message. What they're saying basically is that you need us to keep you safe from the bad cops. You withdraw your support. If the black man withdraws his support to the Democratic Party, then Trump will come, and then with him the trigger-happy cops. So do you want that? Understand, you need us to protect you from the cops. So it is nothing but a straight political message. It's a political message intimidating the black community from voting Republicans this time. So we can clearly see this. And then you have these subliminal messages, because their world is crumbling. They have been creating a narrative. They have been describing a world, a reality, which is falling apart. They have been saying, Obama, for instance, was saying, ISIS is contained. We are safe. A ridiculous thing to say. When we look at the world, Americans are not safe. We see the Americans dying there in Europe, in the recent terror attacks, all over Europe, in France, in Germany. And then you see also Americans find the world less safe to travel. In Egypt, for instance, in the bomb attack on the airport, in Belgium. It can go on like that. So definitely the world is not safe for them. But back home too, it is not safe. Now, to say that after all the attacks that took place in San Bernardino and since Fort Hood massacre, the San Bernardino attack to the gay club attack in Florida, where about 50 people were shot dead, it's nowhere. And then you had the stabbing in Minnesota. It's falling apart. Suddenly, you were saying it's safe, but it doesn't look so safe. If the pressure cooker bomb that this guy kept, like in Boston Marathon bombing, if it had exploded in a very populated area during some peak hours, it would have ended up in hundreds, maybe thousands of casualties. It was like a 9/11 event. So this is falling apart right before their eyes. America is no longer safe. And so, instead of admitting that reality, to cover it up, they try to cover it up as intentional act. What intentional act of second explosive device being defused? What is an intentional act, if not terrorism? And what is a second explosive device being defused by the bomb disposal squad? It should be a bomb. So it was all there from the minute they broke the news. The whole story was there, that it was a terrorist attack involving multiple bombs. And what was left was the usual suspects, which are the ISIS. So they beat around the bush, keep telling you in bits and parts with a lot of lies about it. They'll lie about it and then affirm the truth. They will say it is intentional act, and then say, no, the mayor will come, and then we will say that it is actually intentional act, and then you'll find the governor come in, Cuomo, and he will slap the mayor and say, it's obvious, man, it's terrorism, and then it's a bomb, and then they'll jump on the head of Trump, who said, it's obvious, which is a bomb. A bomb went off in New York. What else to call that? An explosive device needing a bomb squad to dispose? It's a bomb. So they go after all kinds of things to intimidate, into not jump into conclusion. What are the conclusions? It was all there the minute they broke the news. Nothing to conclude. It was all there. And everybody knew who did it. In 9/11, who would do it? I can't imagine a Buddhist doing a terror attack in 9/11. So you don't have to jump into, you don't need that much of a jump. You can stay where you are and you can see what it is. And they read the news from the day one. So they've been going about giving it by bits and bits, and they have come this far to admitting the truth. Every 24 hours, they will reverse that thing. It was no terror intentional, then it was a terror. So no bomb, and then it's a bomb. And then you say there's one guy, it is linked, these three events were linked. No, these two events in New Jersey were separate. Oh, no, it was the same. Probably, then they say it was the same guy who kept it. And then they say others may be involved. There's no foreign connection. Now there is a foreign connection. His wife, actually, they hauled all the way to Afghanistan, to Pakistan, and brought this guy's wife. Okay, look at this, all this ridiculous farce, this absurd, theater of the absurd. And then, when this world is crumbling on their top, on top of all the scandals falling on her, she herself collapsing like the Twin Towers, on top of all this, suddenly, they find the guy and then seize him, and he's an Afghan as usual with a beard and all that, with a handbook in hand. He has a handbook. He went down with a book in the shootout. And that handbook, he has written wonderful things. He has said a lot about the jihad, about the ISIS, and about the leaders he admires in that, naming them and all that. So in short, this is a jihad handbook. So it goes down with a book. And immediately, they create another scene. They shift the focus elsewhere, where they're talking about a black man who was cornered by in a kind of a domestic violence scene, who is a former convict, and he was a dangerous man who has been convicted for the felony of assault with weapon. And they corner him and they shoot him. Whether it's correct or not, all those things we will know later. But then the point is, they are saying he went down with a book. For just carrying a book, he was shot, and he was a black man. For the crime of being a black man, he was shot. By whom? By a black man. A black officer shot him. So with this absurd kind of an idea of a narrative, they begin floating it all around, without any proof he had a book, without any proof that he didn't have a gun, and with the full knowledge that the officer who shot him was a black man. And everybody knows these kind of areas, and he was a convict. He has been to jail before for aggravated assault with weapons. And with all this background, what we see here is these kind of townships where the crime rates are very high. So what do we see here? We see a subliminal message. The man went down holding a book in New York. Very embarrassing for Obama and Hillary Clinton, seeking a third term for the Democratic Party, which has brought America to a sorry state of affairs. It has dragged the whole world along with it. We are not living in the United States. We are friends, but then still, we have some of our families living there, but still, we are affected downstream. Whatever America does impacts us. That is why we are taking interest in this election. And we find that this Democratic Party has the cheek to ask for a third term. And the man went down holding a book in New York City. He's busting a bubble of your politically correct suppression of this jihad. And then the same man goes down as a black man with a book which nobody saw. And the crowds are being told, pick up the gun to fight for this man who went down with the book. Suddenly the narrative changes. Somebody is lacing it with subliminal message. There was no book. Nobody saw any book. And the book, the man who went down with the book, who is actually an Afghan, who married a Pakistani, who tried to blow up Americans to bits in New York and New Jersey kids, school kids. And that man suddenly becomes a cause to stand for and fight. How do you fight? You shoot another guy. That's it. They shot a man. Eye for an eye style. So this another book suddenly surfaces in the hand of a black man and becomes his cause. Even Obama says so. Obama says, he talks about this and says that this is not the way to go about breaking glass and all. He completely omits many mentioning of the man who was shot dead. They shot dead a man. These protesters, peaceful protesters, shot dead a man that night. And he's not talking about it. He's saying, oh, the breaking glasses is not the way to go about it. He didn't even say shooting people is horrible. He didn't. He simply said breaking glasses and all those stuff doesn't work for fighting for your cause. It doesn't serve your cause. He doesn't say your cause. He says doesn't serve the cause. The cause. His cause. He is empathizing with it so much that he's describing it as the cause. The cause. And this cause, which actually mobilizes people on the street, goes on a rampage, burns property, loots property, shoots people, kicks them. This kind of cause, wonderful cause, and the wonderful protesters. And we have, on the other hand, we have a man, Ahmad, another man, Ahmad, an Afghan citizen, naturalized citizen. They never miss a point to describe him as a naturalized citizen, as though that's the way Americans do things, keeping pressure cooker bombs, and then ISIS get their ideas from a book. All right, keep that in mind. They get all their ideas. ISIS gets an idea from a book, Quran, and both Ahmed and ISIS get their ideas from that book. And so this man goes down with a book, his own handwritten journal, where he's full of all these ideas. And another book suddenly surfaces in the hands of a black man, and this is now the cause Obama is talking about. And that's not the way to go about breaking glasses. And of course, he doesn't say anything about the killing of a man and looting property, but that's not the way to go about. So how is the way to go about that? Obama explains that, the right way to go about that. So there is a right way to go about that, which is vote for Democrats. And he says justice is not always colorblind. By that, what he means is this Justice Department, the cops, are doing it actually because they are racist. He says that. They are doing it because he's a black man, which is absurd, because the man who shot him was a black man. He couldn't have done it because he's a black man. A black man shot, okay, suddenly he sees, oh, I see one of mine there, I had to go and kill him. And makes little sense. And the man who is defending him, the police chief, is a black man. Okay. This kind of, so you can clearly see the president as well as the presidential candidate is reinforcing this narrative of the Black Lives Matter, which is not based on facts, and calling it as the cause, and as well suggesting to them there is a better way to go about this cause, wonderful cause. The cause with no cause. Okay, there's no cause. What is the cause here? The guy was definitely not shot because he was a black man by another black officer, which is absurd to suggest. There's no cause. And if you say the system, the cops have been shooting too many people, well, we have to look at the figures of violence there. The kind of violence that the cops do, we compare it with the kind of violence like guys like that guy who is supposed to, the cops say that he had a gun. These kind of gun-wielding people in these kind of communities are doing high levels of violence. When you hear that, you lose all kinds of fascination for the United States, whether at all it's worth even visiting that place, because that kind of violence is happening in these cities. It gives a very bad impression about America. It's a violent place. And it is a fact, because when I check the statistics, I find that in Afghanistan you are much safer. And in Iraq, during the entire period of the insurrection, you are safer, because less number of people got killed in the insurrections of Afghanistan by the Taliban and by the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda inside the insurrection of the Sunni group and all that put together, Al-Badr groups, all that put together. The number of casualties there is less than what is the figure of people shot and killed in just one city, Chicago. This is amazing. When you see these kind of townships like Charlotte and all those things, the level of violence exceeds the level of violence you see in full-fledged civil war and in kind of places like Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, what is there to wonder about? Why the cops are always edgy when it comes to confronting people they are mostly well known. They know them, know these kind of people. It's not that they look a black cop is looking for a black man today to which black man shall I shoot down. It's like more like they know these guys. Then most of them are being in prison already. And so when they have these parameters and they are very edgy about approaching these guys, and it's not denied that mistakes can happen. When you put the cops through so much pressure, there's no empathy whatsoever for the cops. Not one word. The president didn't say one word about the cop. You have to understand the cops. They are doing a tough job. So they are policing places with high rates of shootouts and killings, domestic violence, this kind of places with crime gangs loitering free. And we have to understand sometimes mistakes can happen, and they are always on the edge of their nerves. And not one word was spared, which means it's a political event arranged by somebody, and the president and Hillary Clinton offers openly take sides without any investigations are finished. They take sides and suggest that there is in fact some systemic injustice going, and the only way to put the cops in their place, that's what Hillary Clinton said, stay right there, like as though she is a school teacher. And the cop immediately salutes them because she's the one who's going to run the place. He is working under her. What she's effectively saying is, hey, come on, gangsters, that I put this cop in his place. You need the Democrats, you need to vote for me to put this cop in his place. And you can have a free run of the place. This is exactly what they are saying. So we see that this subliminal scripting of a fallen man with a book in hand, and the call to rise up in rage and tear down the system, and the president calling it just cause, violence against police, breakdown of law and order, indulgence in violence, breach of private property, killing of civilians in retaliation. They shot a man there in that protest. So this lynch mob kind of things that we are seeing in a first world country like United States, with inflammatory rhetoric, with logical holes in argument, and fake rage, unabashed racial violence. The net effect seems to be to project some ongoing oppression of blacks by majoritarian state. By this narrative, what the world understands is that the above two are a given, that there is a just cause, and there is indeed some systemic discrimination and oppression going on against the blacks. They take it as a given. The world, they listen to this narrative, look at the United States. But who is the majority there? Who runs the system there? Places like Charlotte, Chicago have roughly 30% population divide. We see that it's equally divided between Hispanic, blacks, and white Americans. So there is indeed no majority there. And in fact, the minority runs the place. The majority is in fact the minority. The system elected by this minority is invariably Democratic Party run enclaves. And the cops are mostly Hispanics. And then the blacks. As we see in Charlotte, the police chief is a black man. So the elected representatives are invariably again Hispanics or blacks, depending on the electoral constituencies demographics. The police chief, for instance. Then there is no reality of the narrative at work there. So still we find this is going on, and people are encouraging it. Here is one report which says scores of students are sitting outside the courtyard of Malad Creek High Friday morning in a peaceful protest. It lasted about 45 minutes and had the support of the school administration. Can you believe this? The school, which has to teach students about subjects and things like that, is actually supporting a political protest, which is absurd to say the least. A protest that has shot at a man, looted property, and it is unabashedly using all kinds of racist rhetorics. And then it is now, since it can't avoid the fact that the black man shot him, it's calling the cops a movement which is whose signals, like the hand symbols of the fist and the hands up. Okay, these things are from the Black Lives Matter. This is a movement, wonderful movement, and a wonderful cause that call for sniper firing at cops. They killed cops, 5 of them, I believe, recently. And with this, this school administration is asking the kids to mimic them. So this is what is happening in the United States, and when Americans do that, the rest of the world follows it. And our leftist crowd, our media, our people, they follow that. They imitate the same thing. So the students are organized through social media. Thursday night, student Jailan Alexander said Malak Creek was one of the several high schools where protests were reportedly planned, says this report. Planned by whom? By these kind of professional protesters, actually who are actually funded by people like George Soros and stuff like that. So Black Lives Matters movement is worsening the situation by propagating a mythological racist narrative based on non-factual grievances. And even though there have to be grievances for everyone, but then even though there may be grievances, they are offering racist entitlement and dependency as solutions. This is similar to the Dalit movements in India, exaggerating certain offenses and then magnifying the grievances and then demanding that their entitlement as well as racist rhetorics are admitted as a given. So the Black Lives Matter misguides people, both the black community as well as the listening world. The Black Lives Matters actually stands for, seeks to plunge America into anarchy and breakdown. And if America breaks down into anarchy, if a first world, the champion of democracy, one of the bulwark of democracy and freedom breaks down, and it is breaking down already. We see that if that happens, it is already under attack from outside, from inside, and it's breaking down. If that happens, the effect will be calamitous for the rest of the free world. No other democracy can escape the fallout because they will quickly replicate it. Once the left tastes blood and they are so sanguine sharks, they'll immediately, each thing will reinforce each other, and the same fund flows will come and they'll start breaking up all other democracies. In India, I predict through the abuse of the Dalit issue. So they will do the same thing here, fomenting street protests or imaginary things and then attribute a kind of oppression against. You see, their film has gone now from the recommended by the National Board. I wonder what the National Censor Board is doing, recommending a film which is based on alleged police atrocities on the Dalits. This is going to the Oscar. I'm 100% confident it will win an Oscar. They give Oscars to these films because it's all the same leftist elite everywhere. So that this is then taken as a given that the police in every situation, no matter what the Dalits are up to, there's no merits of each case or any different individual differences. Everything becomes actually seen in terms of black and white. And so they are building a narrative here, cultural narrative. So you can see how widespread all this is and how blind our people are. This is supposed to be a nationalist government in India, and it has recommended one of the films based on undocumented human rights abuse of the Dalits. And as a given, as a narrative, which means you are now building another narrative in India against the cops killing Dalits. You don't understand how unhelpful it is for the actual backward segments of this society who are now called the Dalits, the oppressed people. They are not oppressed in the sense they are disadvantaged, alright, like the blacks, the same situation here. But then you are being so unhelpful to these people. A very unhelpful narrative in that it justifies, like Obama does, the cause and then misdirects their anger and then takes them on a course where parties that will encourage this state dependency will be actually offering this protection racket. So you have to keep electing us to keep the bad cops away. And then when the cops are done, you will be handing over these communities to lawlessness. It will be like Chicago, like nothing, anything goes, and all the time bangs and high rates of violence and stuff like that. So which is not at all good for them. And this is why we have to understand this phenomenon happening in India, in America, and then prevent this from being mimicked in India. The high-heeled orchestrators of this insurrection, it is actually an insurrection, a civilian insurrection, a political insurrection. They are as ruthless as Pol Pot or Mao Zedong or Joseph Stalin, because when these Pol Pot regimes were doing all these killings, nobody knew that it was happening. And similarly, this much of violence is happening. We have the statistics. Look how, by a clever narrative, this whole thing is all about the cops and not about the crime gangs and the high rates of violence. So nobody even understands there are mountains of skulls already. Like in Pol Pot regime, there are mountains of skulls in Chicago, in many of these black cities and enclaves. It's all swept out of view in the carefully staged drama that we see in the streets of Charlotte. So this should not be allowed to happen to our people in India, because whatever they do, these people like to see a copy. So what the Americans are witnessing is no longer a presidential contest. It's a kind of almost a quasi-political and a quasi-insurrection within America, between a kind of a Stalinist establishment, which has been built, subtly Stalinist establishment, has been built, it has been put in place. All institutions have been compromised. And with a state media style, like in Soviet Union, the media is owned by the state. Here the whole media seems to be bought out, it's sold out. And with a state media style narrative to any kind of political challenge. And it's spiraling down. Like anything, it's spiraling down into a vortex of violence, anarchy, breakdown of the system, and parallel states. It's a parallel state run by the ultra-leftist, with a parallel economy of crime gangs who are the job providers, and the electorates there are not free citizens exercising their free will to vote, but are captives and intimidated into protection rackets, like Hillary Clinton and Obama are doing. Vote for us to keep the bad cops out. Law is enforced then by crime syndicates, and justice is delivered by the muzzles of guns. And this is nothing but a totalitarian, parallel state of terror that is run between them, the Hispanic organized crime, the black American crime gangs, as they go about contesting perpetually for carving out their territories. Law enforcement is projected and perceived as the enemy of the people. Protection racket of leftist elites typically reassure the cops who would be told, stop right there. In reality, year after year, thousands are buried quietly. What we have here is like the killing fields of the Khmer Rouge.